Good morning.
Morning. Welcome to Coffee with the Pastors. We have a guest from not even our same time zone this time. We are welcoming all the way across the country in California, Lauren Cohen, who's the pastor at the Pomona Fellowship Church of the Brethren. And we've known Lauren at least since seminary.
When was this? How long ago was that?
I know.
Yeah, I can't even remember how long we've known each other, but it's been a while.
Yeah, I think it was one of those situations where like we knew of each other for a while before we actually knew each other. Yeah. But so is the Brethren way. But welcome, Lauren.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Is it sunshiny in Pomona today?
The sun is peeking through. We typically have, this time of the year, we have cloudier mornings that break way into very hot afternoons. And so it is still morning here and the sun is coming out. So it's quite a lovely day.
Well, here in DC, we picture every day as absolutely gorgeous out there.
Of course.
Thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be with you.
We, as you know, as I'm sure you're an avid Coffee with the Pastors viewer,
Of course.
We have a series of questions that we work through with all of our esteemed colleagues to get a little peek into what the world of ministry is like for folks all over the place.
Yep. So our first question is just, how long have you been in ministry with Pomona?
I've been at my congregation for a little over a year and a half. I started in December of 2018. Cool. And this is my my first congregation serving as pastor. I was doing other kinds of ministry before this, so a little over a year and a half.
What were you up to before Pomona?
I was serving in a couple different chaplaincy roles. I was serving as both the hospital chaplain at a small community hospital in the tiny town that we used to live in central Maine.
Cool.
And I was also doing some higher education and college ministries at the University of Maine, working with college students there in religious and interfaith engagement sort of opportunities. So chaplaincy in kind of two different worlds.
Yeah,
with the eldest and the youngest. That's cool.
Yes.
Cool.
So what are some things that you would name as the parts of pastoral ministry that you just love?
I think the first thing that I would say is I love the people. I love what it means to pastor a group of people and develop relationships with them and kind of journey with them through the ups and downs of life. One of the things that I loved about being a chaplain when I was a chaplain was the ability to come alongside people in some of the most challenging and some of the most joyful experiences of their lives. And being a pastor means that you get to do that not in sort of one-off experiences, like in a hospital where you kind of visit someone when you're hospitalized and then you maybe don't see them again. Mm-hmm. Or if you're doing, college chaplaincy, you develop a relationship with someone over, the 4 years they're in college and then they move on. But when you're a pastor, you really get to develop the relationships over a longer period of time. Mm-hmm. And I think that brings a richness and just a joy that I hadn't experienced in the other kinds of ministry that I was doing. So that's what I really love about being a pastor. That's a real joy, and I have to say that my congregation makes it very easy to love them. So that's
always good.
Yeah, it is a real joy. So
yeah, cool, very cool.
What makes ministry in the Pomona Church especially exciting and interesting?
Yes. Well, I will say that the most interesting thing going on with us, in addition to, of course, worshiping online during a pandemic and all these things that a lot of us are doing right now, the biggest thing for us is that we are actually in the process of selling our church building and property.
What?
We have a very big building, and we have a small congregation that's not using the building in the ways that we used to be able to use it. And this was a decision that was made by the congregation actually before I ever showed up, before they ever called me to be their pastor. They were discerning their future and their finances and the ways they wanted to be faithful with their discipleship and with their resources. And they decided that the best and most faithful use of their resources was to sell the building, sell the property. It's about a little over 3 acres, and discern what their ministries and what the church would look like when our building was no longer a part of who we are. We're not closing. We're not closing as a congregation. We're just going to be relocating and reimagining what the church looks like in the future. So we are in that process right now.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
I'm sure that's difficult in the current circumstances to navigate.
It is. In some ways, it has made our discernment a little bit more challenging, but in other ways, it has really aligned well with how we've been reimagining church anyway, because we have been telling ourselves and preaching to ourselves that the church is more than a building, right? And now we are living into that sooner than we anticipated living into that. But in a way, we were really prepped to move into online spaces and move into different ways of being the church in a way that maybe some other folks weren't. That we got an opportunity to practice what we've been preaching to ourselves earlier than anticipated, but it's a good practice. It's a good way to live out what we believe that the church is the people, and the ways that we care for one another, and the ways that we demonstrate the love of Jesus to those around us. And the building doesn't need to necessarily be an integral part of that. So,
So you think you'll be where do you think this might lead? Will you have a structure, or will you move home to home, or find the empty park, or what?
Yeah, we're discerning all of that. And sometimes it can kind of be a chicken or the egg kind of a conversation. So do we look for a new space to either buy or to rent or to share? And then once we know what that space is, do we then discern what our ministries in that space and in that neighborhood will be? Or do we approach it from the other direction? Do we say, what do we feel called to do? What's the specific, unique parts about us as a congregation and the gifts that we have to offer? And then where do we find a space, or how do we make decisions around our future space, our future home, based on what we know about ourselves, what we have to offer? Kind of a chicken or the egg kind of a question, right?
Right.
And we have really decided to approach it from that second point of view, to discern kind of what we have to offer, what are we willing to change, what are we willing to do differently and try, and how will that impact where we look to be next? If it means buying property, if it means renting property, if it means doing a combination of online and in-person gatherings in the future, that's what we're doing right now. So it's big. It's scary, and it's exciting. I think the Spirit is really at work here.
What's real estate like out there? Is it pricey?
Yes. I guess that's one blessing that we definitely have in Southern California, in Los Angeles County, is that the sale of our property will generate a substantial amount of financial resources for us, that we can be flexible in terms of what we look for. It also means if we choose to buy property, then it will also be expensive.
Right.
But we're definitely fortunate, and we recognize that that is a blessing of being in this area in particular, is that land is worth a lot of money.
Right.
And has a lot of value.
So I'm remembering Fuller Seminary is not too far from you all, right?
Right.
And they were having a similar conversation about moving further out, cutting costs and these kind of things to reimagine. I think they went backwards though, didn't they?
Yes. So interestingly, Fuller is located in Pasadena, which is really close to where my husband and I live. And they were in talks with relocating to Pomona, which is the city that our church is in. And for a number of different reasons, I think related to finances, that sale has not proceeded, and they've actually backed out. And as far as I know, they're planning at this point to stay in Pasadena. But for the last year or so, that really was, those were talks that were happening, that we could have a new seminary in the city where our church is. But unfortunately that's not proceeding. So I'm not sure what their current process is like, but it's definitely not a new phenomenon that churches and seminaries and other institutions are kind of rethinking space and property and kind of what's not only financially responsible, but what's faithful, and what does it look like to be a good steward of the resources that we have.
Especially as people our age have such a different relationship to space and land. We're used to moving often and quickly, and it's just the future church won't have the sentimental connection to the sanctuary or whatever it is.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean, we've been married for 9 years and lived in 4 different houses.
Yeah.
So space is different.
Yeah, it is.
Well, it sounds like to me that they've got the right person in place to help them walk through this with a non-anxious excitement for what God can do with the change. Maybe you don't feel like that every day, but
some days I do.
Yeah.
We better not share this with Oakton people. They might get ideas.
No. Yeah, we'll put a disclaimer.
This will go in the archives. All right, this is the moment, right, that we've all been waiting for.
Yes, this is the pop quiz.
Uh-oh.
Now, I know, Lauren, that you had a very diverse and exciting seminary experience. So I'm sure that this word that we're going to give you has come up before. In fact, it might even be a regular part of life for you today. And I was really excited to give this word to you because I'm hoping you can give some theological background for some
Yikes.
For some things that I know I've been trying to work on Tim to see the benefit of this in our ministry. So the word that, and I'm going to say it and I'm going to spell it because I think the spelling is important.
I agree.
So the word is doxology, but not spelled in the traditional way. It's spelled DACHSOLOGY. So dox, not
It's a little extra phlegm in it.
Doxology. And so it's not the DOX that we usually see in the church, but dox. Yeah. So how would you give some theological foundation that would really help Tim out in understanding that word?
What a good word. Wow. Well, I guess the way I would describe it and how I would define it is it's a theological concept that I've actually seen that's gained more traction and more wider understanding during this pandemic and during the age of COVID-19, especially while so many pastors and churches have moved to doing online worship or church meetings over Zoom or live streaming or Facebook Live. So basically, here's what it is. Doxology is the phenomenon that some pastors experience while live streaming or holding worship services on Zoom or other meetings. The phenomenon of having a small dog, say the size of a dachshund, sitting on your lap for the duration of the service or the meeting. Like many things in life, this can either be a difficult or distracting event or phenomenon, or it can be a calming and a comforting phenomenon to the pastor.
Yeah.
The doxology phenomenon can occur at any time without the knowledge of those on the other side of a screen, but it can be made manifest at the end of the event or the service or the meeting when the dog decides to get up and pop his or her head into the view of the camera or the screen to make, his or her presence known. And of course, the doxology phenomenon also applies to other small pets like cats. But like I said, this is was a relatively obscure phenomenon in the past that's only become more well-known and more experienced during this pandemic and during all of these virtual and online experiences.
That is true.
You know, you can kind of say that the doxology phenomenon is really, I mean, it's characteristic of the Holy Spirit, right? Sometimes, you know, you may be having really good conversations and it's not until the end where, you know, the Holy Spirit just pops out and be like, I'm here, right? That you realize that the Spirit's been there the whole time, providing you comfort or disturbing your sense of comfort, right?
Exactly. That is just spot on. Spot on.
This was brilliant.
Yeah, show off your mug that is inspiring you today. Yes.
Here's my mug.
Was this the doxology at the end of Coffee with the Pastors?
That's right.
Well, I was going to say, I was experiencing actually the phenomenon of the doxology for the beginning of our conversation. And since the small dog has left my lap and has decided to go on to do other things or sleep in other locations. So I was hoping to have a little pop-up example, but he has opted to not give us that today. So sometimes the Spirit decides to make his or her appearance at a later time.
Be a little bit more elusive.
Yes. Yeah.
I think the dog just doesn't like to talk about California real estate, personally.
Put him to sleep, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning, Pastor Lauren. Cheers to you and all out in Pomona. And blessings on all that is your ministry right now.
Thank you. Thank you for your prayers.
2024 at annual conference.
I hope it's sooner than that.
It was great talking with you both. Thank you.
Good to see you.